We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Freedom that you are enjoying right here, right now, will one in part because a lot of black people willing to fight and die so that you might be free. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
See, I think it's morally wrong that people should pay the ultimate price and then be forgotten. Forgotten by those who are enjoying their benefits. That's you, that's me. How would you like to have your family, your loved ones die for somebody else's freedom, only to be forgotten by them? Now, in school, you learn African American history, right? And you learn American history, right? But some people believe these two have nothing to do with each other. Is that so? No. African American history is American history. And I don't care where your people come from. I don't care what your ethnic origins are. I don't care what your cultural background is. If you are an American, you share in African American history because these people helped you to be free. Now, am I saying, hi, we black people won the American Revolution all by ourselves? Am I saying that? No. But what I'm saying is that unless we worked together, we would have never gotten our freedom. Because if you take away the Irish, take away the Germans, we wouldn't have been able to pull it off. Now, our country's motto is E pluribus unum. It's a Latin term, but I bet you even this young lad here knows it. Pluribus, or plural. What does plural mean? Anybody know? More than one. I knew it. More than one or many. Well done, sir. Unum or uno. Uno. One. Roughly translated, it means the many that become one. Can you think of a better description of us Americans? Think about it. The Irish, the Africans, the Germans, the French, the Spanish, all different type of nationalities, all different type of people, combined to make one nation, one people, Americans, us. Our power has always been in our diversity. It always will be in our diversity. It's just a shame that we don't appreciate each other the way that we really should.
That was Noah Lewis portraying Revolutionary War soldier Edward Ned Hector. I'm Tyler Putman with the Museum of the American Revolution, and on this Meet the Revolution program, I'm really excited to give you a chance to get to know Noah Lewis. We recorded our conversation separately in 2 parts, so see me ask a question, and then Noah answer it in a separate recording. The first thing I asked was for Noah to tell us a little bit about himself.
How you doing, Tyler? Good to see you. Good to talk with you again. Please send my warm regards to those over at the Museum of the American Revolution. You want to know a little bit about me? Well, I was born in Heidelberg, Germany, September 18, 1953. I am a widowed father with 4 children that reside in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, on the outskirts of Philadelphia. My degrees are in biology and electronics. I achieved a certification in biomedical technology. I would own and operate TLC of technical service, an electronic repair shop for 25 years in the Upper Darby area. I competed in various sports like track, cross country, wrestling, and gymnastics, as well as martial arts. My recent enjoyment is volleyball. I started the Ned Hector presentations in 1996 at Bywood Elementary School. I would go into my daughter's 4th grade class and do presentations on electricity and biology. During this time, I had been doing genealogical research on my family. I would share some historical items that I had learned with Pat Freeberry, my daughter's teacher. She asked me if I had any presentations on the subject of colonial America. I learned about this Black Continental soldier who fought in the Battle of Brandywine from a book by Charles Blockson called Black Genealogy. I was amazed and fascinated by Ned, even though I was not directly related to him. But because of him, I realized that there were many blacks that existed that contributed to America's gaining its independence. After thinking over Miss Freeberry's request, I informed her that I would be honored to talk with her students about this subject. I asked her, would she mind if I came in dressed out? She gave me the nod. I did a presentation for her class, and I returned the following years. Somewhere around the year 2000, the suggestion was made that I should take this program to other schools. It sounded good, so I did. During this time, I met people who would become my mentors. Joseph Beckton, a supervisor at Independence Hall, Nancy Webster, and a group called the Past Masters of the Domestic Arts. From Joe, he would impress on me the need for me to, as a black person, to tell our story, and he would help to shape the military side of my presentation. From Nancy and the Past Masters, the domestic side of my presentation would be shaped. I presented Ned Hector in many schools the following years. Later, I co-authored a book that would tell about Ned Hector in a story format. I am blessed to have the opportunity to help others to appreciate the contribution we black people made to the freedom of all Americans. There is a part of me that hopes that the souls of these amazing contributors will rest a little more peacefully by giving them the honor that they were denied for so many years.
Noah, could you tell us a little bit more about the person that you most often portray, Edward Ned Hector?
Edward Ned Hector was one of many black soldiers that fought for America's independence. Where he comes from, we do not know. Where he is buried, we do not know. What we know is that he enlisted or was pressed into service in 1777. He is first found on Proctor's 3rd Pennsylvania Artillery mustered roll in February 1777 and is identified as a bombardier. A bombardier is usually one of the 3 rear positions of the cannon. From his obituary, we learn that he is also a teamster and fought in the Battle of Brandywine River. The obituary tells us he is a teamster in charge of an ammunition wagon. A teamster is a wagon driver. In his case, as an artillery teamster versus a baggage teamster, he engages actually in the battle. This is evident by what he is noted for, an act of courage. In that battle, he went against the orders to abandon his wagons, his horses, his cannons, and retreat to Chester. Instead, when the British forces overran his artillery emplacement, he risked his life to save his horses, wagons, ammunition, and actually pick up and save some fallen muskets. The quote he is remembered for is, "The enemy shall not have my team. I will save my horses and myself." In another document from Proctor's artillery, we learn the wagon and the 4 horses were his property, which informs us that he was a free man. Slaves did not own property since they were considered property. We find Ned on various documents hauling artillery supplies from the furnaces to armories. After the war, he moves to Conshohocken area before it became incorporated as Conshohocken in 1850. He has between 4 to 8 children, some of which are listed as being poor children to be educated at the expense of the public. This means that he's probably poor. His obituary tells us that he died, that when he died, he had been married for over 50 years. This would mean that he was married at the age of 40, maybe indicating that this was his second wife. The obituary indicated that she would die within 2 days of his burial. We're not sure where she is buried or where he is buried. I suspect that Robert Cemetery on Route 202. Charles Bloxon informed me that when he was a child, that his parents took him actually out to the Robert Cemetery and told him that Ned was buried there. Ned is listed on the Plymouth Federal Census from 1800 to 1830. He is paying taxes on dogs and on a cow. There is one civil incident in the court records where he is robbed by someone named James Brown. Towards the end of his life in 1827, 1829, and 1833, he applies for his pension from the Pennsylvania Congress. He is denied. The head of the pension committee said that he could not prove how long he had served. Then he went on to say, even if he could prove it, they would not see fit to grant him his pension. It would not be until 1833 when he would get a one-time payment of $40 instead of an annual pension. In the pension report, we would learn that he was also in the Battle of Germantown. There is a painting depicting 4 cannons bombarding the Chew House during this battle. When I look at this painting, I feel like I'm looking through the eyes of Ned. It's chilling and fascinating. Edward Hector would die Friday, January the 3rd, 1834, at the age of 90 years old. He would have 2 long obituaries written about him, and it would appear in newspapers all over the United States. Edward Ned Hector was so highly regarded in Conshohocken that in 1850, 16 years after his death, his neighbors would officially name a street after him. I wish I knew where he was from. I wish I knew for sure where he was buried, so I could go and I could honor where he's resting at. Most of all, I wish I could find his pension petitions so I could learn more about him. Learning about him has led me to appreciate the contribution blacks made to our country and our lives. To my fellow black Americans, what I wish we knew is black people were more than manual laborers or slaves during this time. Many are heroic soldiers, and without the service of the African American during this time, there is little chance that we would have won our independence. So we black people need to be proud of them and their accomplishments. To the non-black Americans, because we blacks helped you to be free, our history is your history too, and you need to embrace it as your own.
Noah, could you tell us a little bit more about the research and the work that went into becoming Ned Hector for your presentations?
When I first started, I tried to tell my audience everything I knew. But I came up against the teacher's curse. The teacher's curse is to constantly be learning more and more, but only to be given a certain amount of time to work within. Agena Rogers from Valley Forge told me to stop vomiting on my audience. Yes, it made me cringe too. But the point came home. She told me to focus on my presentation and learn to present a 5, 10, 15, 30, 45, and 60-minute presentation on demand at a spur of a moment. I broke my presentations down into segments which made them flexible and manageable. The most obvious change I had was with my outfit. To this day, if my fellow reenactors feel I'm getting a little bit too full of myself, they remind me of how I looked when I started. In Miss Freeberry's class, my first outfit was a pair of light blue hospital scrubs with white socks pulled knee-high up over the bottom of them. And woman's white blouse with the collar turned inside out, an old yellow linen vest topped off by a cheap souvenir tricorn hat. It was bad. I mean, it was really bad. But I had no realization of how bad it really was. I came to the reenactment of the Battle of Brandywine dressed like that. Fortunately, I met a gentleman there named Carl Kloss. He was portraying General Washington. Without reservations, he took me under his wing and let me tag along with him that day. He gave me a lot of useful information and gently suggested that I might want to research the clothing some. I was wondering why some of the other reenactors were saying, well, I guess everybody got to start somewhere. Well, I was steered towards the colonial plantation in Ridley Park and educated about hats, shirts, breeches, waistcoats, civilian and regimental coats. My early presentation reflected more of the domestic teamster. Gradually, it morphed into a teamster/artillery look. And presently, it is now the more full Proctor's 3rd Pennsylvania Artillery type look. Along with my clothes, my knowledge evolved. Researching went from reading school books to specialized books to going to historical sites, historical society, lectures, archives, looking for original documents, and talking with experts. The hardest part has been to look at the information and think through it for myself, then having to go back and correct it when I find I got it wrong. There's a lot of wrong information out there, unfortunately. This experience has given me tools that helped me to become a better researcher. Many of us shape history in light of our modern attitudes and perspectives. This distorts history. I am constantly being challenged to see history through the period's perspective and then translate it to the present understandings. My education and training is an ongoing acquisition.
Thanks, Noah. And finally, what's it like to do this work as an African American? Have there been particular rewards or challenges? And how has the story of Edward Hector and Black revolutionary history impacted your thinking about life in the present?
One of the greatest challenges in what I do is connecting the past to the present day people. I've chosen role-playing with my audience as a medium of communication. I was never good at being lectured to. I was always a sort of a hands-on person. I think there's a lot of people who are that way. When you stand in someone else's shoes, things look different. I try to explain how we are different from our past and yet how we share in the commonality of the human condition. The people of the past did what they did because they were acting on the same wants, fears, desires, and concerns that we all share. For example, slavery owes its existence to the fact that people want other people to do all the work so that they could draw the benefits. It's much like how we treated our parents when we were kids. There is something about stepping into shoes of someone else that makes you see things in ways you hadn't before. I love watching the faces of and experiencing the reaction of people who step into these roles as Washington or a soldier or a business person, artillerist, and other type of people. In the artillery drill, they get to understand that being a leader is not easy, nor is working together as a team when you are under pressure. But eventually they get it. They realize it mustn't have been easy for our ancestors either. They come to understand things I could not have communicated to them in words. When I started, I was concerned that there was going to be a backlash from the white reenactors and historians. Understand that there are not many black reenactors portraying this time period. I was saying things many of them had never heard, and some things that actually went against what they thought they knew. To my great surprise, I was amazed at how I was welcomed and the information was embraced. Yes, there were some who had an adverse reaction, but not many. Sometimes I would get whites saying to me, "You know, many Africans sold their own people into slavery." I gathered their point was to show how we blacks really didn't care for our own. But I come back with, yes, we sold our own, just like the Irish sold the Irish, the German, the British. Just about every group of people I know of has sold their own and anyone else they could get away with. This is because the problem of slavery is the problem of the human condition driven by economic greed. We want someone else to do all the hard work while we collect the benefits. Without the benefits and the money that comes from that, slavery would die overnight. They normally get the point. However, I realize the majority of the non-black people wanted these untold stories to be brought to life. The reaction from black young people was different. If you're not black, you need to understand that many of us see ourselves in the colonial picture as being only poor, enslaved, and if in the military, only manual labor. Many non-black people also have this image. So the initial reaction to black people in colonial attire is, you must be a slave. Within us blacks, there is a deep, seething resentment that our African ancestors were kidnapped and robbed of our culture to serve only as a tool for white Americans' benefit. It is the same reason that the Irish hate the British. The image of a slave hits that nerve. So, when I present in schools with a majority black student body, there is a backlash that I have to work through. However, as the presentation goes on and they hear what I am saying, I can see a grateful quantum shift in their attitude. Two of the most rewarding moments I have had are when an African American student wrote thanking me for helping her to connect to her people's place in the history of this country. The other occurred when I was told that an Asian student approached the teacher overseeing the group I had just addressed, and with tears in his eyes said, because of what he said, I know I am part of America. He was reacting to the E pluribus unum part of my presentation. It's moments like these that bring tears to my eyes and make me thank God that I am given the honor to do this.
That was Noah Lewis, part of the Museum of the American Revolution's ongoing series of programs called Meet the Revolution. If you'd like to learn more about Noah's work or the story of Edward Hector, you can check out his website, Ned Hector, NEDHECTOR.com. And of course, there's all sorts of great resources about Black Revolutionary history on our channels at AmRev Museum. Thanks again for joining us.